Pluto is about to move into Aquarius in the next 2 or 3 days' time. Pluto. I'm not going to go into the mythology of Pluto, the way it was discovered, how it got its name, because I've done all this so many times on different podcasts and streamings in the last few weeks. I do want to do a 1-minute summary on Pluto, in that, in its negative form, Pluto can be obsessive and intense, compulsive, extreme. With words like crises and trauma, it can manipulate, disempower, backstab. It can be coercive and subversive. It can be your worst nightmares. It can deal with psychological disturbances, bad dreams, disempowerment of all types. At the neutral level, however, Pluto deals with things like purging, detoxing, cleansing, purifying, and eliminating. It's the way you cleanse yourself from the inside out. It's where you go into those caves at the bottom of your soul and deal with what's down there, much of which, incidentally, is only imagined. It's more of a fear of what might be there rather than what actually is, in my experience. At the positive side, Pluto deals with transformation, regeneration, and rebirth. It is the phoenix rising from the ashes, the snake shedding its skin, the caterpillar into the butterfly. Pluto in a natal chart, under difficult aspect, shows the way that one deals with fear when you know what you're scared of. Phobia, when you know that you're scared but not what of. Paranoia, which is the persecution complex. Pluto in a natal chart in a positive light gives the way that one consciously uses psychological techniques for personal growth and self-development, and it helps empower others into digging into their own psychology as well. Pluto and psychology are strongly related, as is evinced by the fact that at the time that Pluto was discovered, so Jung was bringing out psychology into the contemporary world, and psychology and astrology are equal sides of the same coin. I remember when Pluto moved into Scorpio in 1982 and 1983 with Saturn. In Britain, it was the time of the miners' strike, a 2-year period where tens of thousands of people went on strike for nearly 2 years because they were under such difficult conditions, digging deep into the earth, dealing with the dark stuff, the black stuff, the coal. And in the end, they lost. Thatcherism. When Pluto moved into Scorpio, we as astrologers said, oh, great, it's going to be a sexual revolution. And we got HIV. And we also said, oh my God, there's going to be nuclear war. And we got a large number of nuclear arms treaties, which really reduced the energy of nuclear war. Excuse me. When Pluto moved into Sagittarius in 1995, we as astrologers said, oh great, it's the end of organised religion. And what do we get? Fundamentalism. We get the 9/11, for example. The downturn in religious attendance leads to an upturn in those that do remain religious as becoming more fundamentalist. And then in 2008, Pluto moved into Capricorn. And astrologers said, oh, great, it's the end of the ideas of world government. And what do we get? Well, nation states seem to be collapsing, and borders are either becoming much stronger and more porous at the same time. And instead of nation state empowerment, the big nations are collapsing under the weight of their own size and importance. And instead we're looking at the corporates and the banks and the invisible groups, online groups, as becoming more the power brokers in the world. So, having been spectacularly wrong with every movement of Pluto into a sign, as astrologers, how can we look at Pluto moving into Aquarius? Aquarius is very much the sign of humanity. It's of our long-term hopes and wishes for the betterment of humanity. It's the sign of community. It's the sign of the future, of new technology, new attitudes towards technology, and the ways that we interact or not with each other, both individually and collectively. So Pluto moving into Aquarius. Well, I suppose on the positive side, it is going to lead to a global community. You can be absolutely certain on this. It's going to take a long time because Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for about 20 years. 18 to 20 years. I'm not quite sure of the exact. So it's going to be difficult to pin anything down and say this is going to be as a direct result of Pluto in Aquarius. But it's inevitable that by the end of Pluto in Aquarius and its movement into Pisces, we will have a global community that will not be defined by national borders. Instead, or ethnic types, or religious divides, or financial divides. By the time Pluto is finished with Aquarius, the internet as we use it now will be seen as obsolete. I know that many people are very cautious around what the future holds. 2 years ago, who had heard of ASI? AI, yes, but ASI or ChatGPT? 15 years ago, who'd heard of file sharing, Zoom, FaceTime, communicating with each other by video anywhere in the world at any time? 25 years ago, we were all getting very paranoid about the Y2K, the millennium bug. And everyone was saying, oh, this internet's a bad thing. 60 years ago, we were talking about how television was a really bad thing and it was going to corrupt the moral values of the world. 100 years ago, radio was saying, no, it's a really bad thing. These radio waves are going to poison our brains. "25, 50,000 years ago, we're going, fire, no, that's a really bad thing. It's dangerous. Put it out. You can't uninvent something because of fear of it. What is obvious is that the escalation, or rather the acceleration of evolution is still gathering pace. And at least in the first few years of Pluto in Aquarius, for the next 2 to 3 years, Pluto is going to be being trined by Uranus in Gemini, another one of the air signs. And I suggest this is going to lead to a vastly accelerated, exponential increase in technological development, alongside a much greater and deeper and faster understanding of the human genome. Whether you like it or not, all but the most blind and most fundamentalists can't help but see that the world is changing very, very fast now, particularly in terms of climate chaos. It is obviously cyclical, happening over a vast cycle of many tens of thousands of years. Polar shifts, ice sheets melting, there's a cycle. Whether humans have added to this in terms of the pollution is a negotiable subject. Don't know. Not going to say yes or no to that. But what is clear is that climate change is happening. And it is now irreversible. There is no way that we can bring the climate back down to where it was even 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Not without massive geoengineering on a planetary scale, and both the financial and the political will is simply not there for that. Therefore, as we get more and more extreme weather patterns, so we have to adapt. And I suggest that with Pluto in Aquarius being trined by Uranus in Gemini, part of that adaptation is going to be some type of interface with the soft emerging technology of the future. We already have this in the way that people with epilepsy now have implants in their brain to limit their attacks. We have people with implants in their brain who can now walk, having been held in wheelchairs for their entire life. Thought control by individuals over their body is becoming slowly. The very first steps are already being taken. As soon as I say thought control, that brings up lots of fear for a lot of people around, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Is other people going to be able to control the way I think? No, don't buy into the fear. But technology is coming. We can't ignore it. So you either use it or you get used by it. The business of the future is to take chances, not risks, but chances. So I am suggesting within the coming couple of decades, we're going to see more and more development of an interface between soft technology and the human genome. Quite how that's going to work, I don't know. It's not going to involve some type of plug-in, you know. You're not going to end up putting a USB chip into your brain or plugging in. But there is going to be some type of emergence of an interface between soft technology and humans. And that is how we will adapt ourselves to the changes of the planet that is we live on. We're not yet ready to emigrate into space, and we won't be for quite a long time yet. The negative side of this, of course, is that there will always be an element of fear, which will lead to an element of control and power, but that is based on greed. And at the base of most of human trauma and tragedy over millennia, we find greed and fear. How come they've got more than me? I want power over my life, therefore I want power over everyone else's so that my life works. One thing is certain. We're all at some stage in our lives going to come to the end of our physical life and leave our physical body. And that inbred fear of mortality, of death, is a very scary prospect to many people. But what if it's just a fallacy? What if we've been force-fed this dogma by, to quote me from many videos in the past, the old men in skirts who just want power over women and children and everyone else out of their own fear, who seek to indoctrinate us through terror. Be good, otherwise you'll go to hell or Sheol or Hades or whatever. And if you're good, you go to heaven. What if instead there's no death? Pluto deals with death and rebirth. And I suggest that Pluto into Aquarius is going to bring us a much greater openness to the idea of transcendence of consciousness. So that instead of thinking that death is the final arbiter, instead when we leave our bodies, we just go to a different dimension of experience, where we still retain a notion of identity and individuality. It's just that there's a massive growth of consciousness where the limitations of the body and the three-dimensional world we currently inhabit are no longer so strong. There are many, many, many people who are already aware of this higher dimensional continuum, and many people can kind of just access the fringes of it in their consciousness through their dreams, their imaginations, their visualizations. The more people there are, the more the barriers are beginning to become porous. Humanity's getting ready for a massive shift in consciousness, and Pluto in Aquarius symbolizes this. Now, of course, it doesn't look like it at the moment with everything that's going on in the world, but what we're seeing at the moment is the last gasp attempt by the old men to try and retain power over the future. And secretly, they know they're doomed to failure. Pluto in Aquarius will bring the same level or more of tragedy, trauma and crisis that we've experienced as a species over this last 100 or so years. It will also bring a much greater capacity for hope, for personal freedoms, freedom of thought, a breakdown of the old, rigid structures that we've lived our life by, and an openness to a new type of future that's never really been imagined before. As an astrologer, I have to welcome Pluto into Aquarius, and I hope you can too. Or you're just going to get caught up in all the fear that's based around religion, greed, money, sex. What a waste of a lifetime. I'm going to do lots more stuff on Pluto and Aquarius. There's some big stuff already out there that I've done just in this last couple of weeks on different platforms. I'll be doing a lot more. Meantime, get ready. It's almost with us. 2.5 days' time. Catch you later, world. Bye.